Well, it's an amazing turn of events. Clearly, this disease affects people in different ways. And I think there's some people that never know they had it. There's a lot of people who have it looks something similar to the president, where they feel really bad for a few hours and then they seem to get better. And I think we also know how to treat this virus better now, too. And then you get people who will be sick for about a week and typically get over it like a really bad flu or cold. And then, of course, there's always that period where they're sick for a week or so and they have a low-grade fever, and then it gets to the lungs. And I think those are really what we have to just
here comes the president. The president is now exiting the building. Secret Service had preceded him. He's now standing, waving, shaking his fist of support, and he's masked here, leaving the Walter Reed Medical Center. This is a live shot, as we've been staying on this for the hour. Here is the president. Unclear whether he will be speaking to the assembled press in the front. He's getting shouted questions now. Let's take a listen.
Do you think you might be a super spreader, Mr. President?
Okay, so he's getting back into the car. He's going to leave momentarily, board Marine One to head back to the White House. You know, he looked pretty strong there, walking out there. So when you see the coverage of this, when you see stories that he's still infectious, that the president, quote, will be putting other people at risk in leaving, that he shouldn't leave, that he's now making the doctors culpable, the doctors who have agreed to release him. When you hear that coverage, what are your first thoughts?
Well, look, we know so much more about this virus, and it's always the same. As I was saying earlier, this virus affects people in different ways. And so for the president to go back into the bubble in the White House, and I will tell you, having been in the White House several times during this coronavirus, look, there's not a place that was better prepared or well equipped than you could possibly be. And I think the fact of the matter is, and a lot of doctors say this, it's just really hard to slow down a virus. It doesn't matter kind of what you do, but those viruses are very, very small and they can get around. And clearly, when this thing becomes contagious, a lot of people get infected. But the fact remains is we know a lot more about this virus, Liz, and that is that, you know, under the age of 70, you're gonna survive this. And I think we have to live our lives. We can't just stay shut down indefinitely. And the president, thank God he's coming out. Okay. And let's hope that he continues on this road to recovery.
Now you're looking at a live shot of Marine One. It's about to take off in a few moments. Again, we're staying on this story for you throughout the hour. And we need to address this story with you, Congressman. Senate Judiciary has postponed a hearing with former FBI Director Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe does not want to testify in person, saying it's not safe. And then his lawyers said, you know what, we don't even want him doing Zoom because it'd be unfair to Andrew McCabe when they talked about how he's citing Sally Yates getting interrupted in her testimony. This comes a week after James Comey denied knowing what was happening in his own Trump-Russia probe about 24 times. Your reaction to Andrew McCabe now saying that he's not going to testify?
Well, look, it's pretty clear. This was the number 2 at the department, at the FBI. He's in the middle of this whole Russiagate hoax. And what happened is that now they've got busted because clearly we found documents that we have never seen, that I had never seen until last Friday. And I've addressed this over the weekend, but those documents need to be made public. I think Comey squirmed away from it and wouldn't answer the question. He couldn't recall anything last week. So it's no surprise to me that McCabe's not going to show up, because I think he's clearly got, he's got serious questions to answer. And I think, the Senate needs to subpoena him, although I think it would be hard to get him in before the election. So it's a telling sign that McCabe's not going to testify this week.
You know, the president has been clearly frustrated at the debates over this story. He's been frustrated with the lack of media coverage on the Biden's pay-to-play conflicts of interest. What documents have you seen? What are they telling you?
Well, what we always wanted to know is, at what point did the FBI know that there was a lot of other intelligence out there, and did they follow those leads? We found that in a deep dive that we did into what was known at the time as the Intelligence Community Assessment. This was ordered by Obama. after Trump won the election, after we had been briefed that the Russians had done nothing out of the ordinary right after the election. And then, boom, they switched on a dime and they began to implement to make it look like the Clinton dirt, the Steele dossier dirt, fusion dirt, was real. And then they did a quick assessment in a matter of just short weeks. And during that time period, the story changed that, oh, yeah, we knew that the Russians were trying to help Trump. So we didn't take that as face value. We've been investigating that. We spent 2 years out looking at documents, and it just so happens that there are documents that we never received, and that's a major problem. So what we originally said was that there were tradecraft problems, that they went out of the norm of what you would expect intelligence analysts to look at and to evaluate, and how to come up with a scenario of what may or may not be true looking at intelligence. We now know, in fact, that the intelligence analysts didn't look at the intelligence at all. And we also know that the FBI didn't follow up on a lot of intelligence leads at all, and that's a major problem.
Okay, let's break away for just a second. The president has boarded Marine One. He's about to take off from Walter Reed Medical Center from Bethesda, Maryland, heading back to the White House momentarily. You will see liftoff of Marine One in just a few seconds. That's what we are hearing right now. I want to return back because this is an important story. So what you're saying is you've got new documents that are smoking gun documents that basically show the FBI withheld information that undercut the credibility of the Steele dossier as it was being sold as credible to the media and to the American people. Is that the story?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's even larger than that. I think it's that they clearly knew in the fall timeframe, around the same time that they were opening up the investigation to the Trump campaign and Republicans, they clearly knew that they probably should, in fact, be investigating Clinton and the Democrats and the Bidens and all of them. I mean, that's the reality here. And so, whoever got all these guys to flip and do these take these, and corrupt the FBI and DOJ, I mean, we don't know the answer to that yet. That's up to the U.S. attorneys that are investigating this to figure out. But in terms of our investigation, Liz, the American people deserve to know exactly what the intelligence agencies had at the time. Because, I mean, my God, look at all the ridiculous leaks of little pieces of intelligence that we've dealt with for the last 4 years. Illegal leaks, I would say, by the way. And here we are now 4 years later, and it ends up there's a whole plethora of information, far overwhelming than anything the FBI or DOJ ever had on Trump, because, in fact, they had nothing. They had zero. There was never anything on Trump and Republicans involving Russians. But yet, I'm telling you, there are plenty of documents that show that there were plenty of problems with the Democrats and what they were doing, and Russians and the games that they were up to. And that's the information that needs to get out.
Yeah, I mean, but we've been digging into the footnotes. Stuart Evans, who's in the Department of Intelligence at the Justice Department, went over to James Comey and his team and said, listen, this is politicized. You're dealing with really firebomb material that's really toxic and bad. Get it out of there. And we kept hearing from the beginning that this was politicized. And sure enough, here we have the president now lifting off from Marine One, heading back to the White House. We're staying on the story that has been basically overshadowing the Trump administration from day one. So now we've got D&I Ratcliffe last week declassifying documents, information that Russian intelligence agency intercepted information that Hillary Clinton authorized a plan to link President Trump to the Russians' hacking of Democrat emails to distract the public from her private email scandal. And so the question is, and then so that Russian disinformation was making its way into the Steele dossier, and then the Steele dossier was basically funded by the Democrats, and it got its way into the FBI. So you're saying that this is a bigger story than we realize. Is that it?
Yeah, it's really the smoking guns, and I will tell you, I've only seen a few of the smoking guns, and what I understand, and those would be enough, by the way, but there's even more smoking guns of additional evidence that shows this. And remember, we've known the Republicans that have done a real investigation here, and any investigative reporter worth anything has known, if you just go back and look, at the time period and throughout 2016, and you compared both the Steele dossiers and what investigative reporter Lee Smith and what he wrote about in his book, the proto dossiers that he found, it was clear that reporters all over the swamp were taking and regurgitating these lies. So it's not hard to figure out what that the Clinton campaign was putting these lies out to their willful reporters that were just regurgitating it and reporting it, ties, strange ties all the time to Russia. This was all through 2016. Most people just ignored it because it was so preposterous. But now we know, what we now know is that, because we always wondered what the motive was. And, we surmised that the motive probably was that Republicans were looking for Clinton's emails, and perhaps those emails would come out. So they needed to have a cover story. So we've thought this for a long time, and now it just ends up that we know our intelligence agencies had exactly that story in clear fidelity that should have been immediately investigated, and it should have cut off any talk of Trump and Russia. I mean, this is corruption at the highest level that we've ever seen in this country.